In the October sunshine at King Power Stadium, Leicester City 0, Crystal Palace 0. And how do you sum that up, Jerry? A point game, or
well, if you bear in mind what's going on before this season, and especially in the second half of games, then you have to err on the side. Yes, it's 0-0, but they haven't conceded in the second half. Obviously, they didn't score today, which, you know, invariably Leicester City do. It's not been their issue this season. So a clean sheet, major plus to begin with. Obviously not scoring, bitterly disappointed with that. I was going to say the best team drew today, but Leicester were the better team.
Yeah, they were.
There's no getting away from that, and that for me is an encouraging sign. They look solid at the back for the most part, barring one or two incidents that were heart and mouth, and the stress levels were going through the roof, but they came out unscathed. So in that respect, I'm going to say it's a point gained, even though it's 2 points dropped, because they were the better team.
Yeah, the thing is, you summed up that answer very well.
Thank you.
Actually, Jerry.
I'm trying to dig a way out of a big hole, but listen, they have conceded, which has been the major issue this year.
Yeah, it has. Absolutely.
Okay, so,
absolutely. Man of the match then?
Well, considering that they haven't conceded, it's going to be a defender. And it's between Castagna and Faes. And I think on this occasion, I'm just going to give it the Wout Faes. I think he said he's looked really solid today. You know, he looks dependable. He looked dependable today. Yes, he made a massive mistake last week that led to the first goal, but today I thought he looked assured, he looked dependable. He looks as if he's enjoying himself out there. So Wout Faes is my man of the match.
Leicester players doing their normal lap of honour. Plenty have stayed behind to cheer them off. It's a point for Leicester City. They're 5th in this season's Premier League. Full-time score then, Leicester 0, Crystal Palace 0.
Thank you, Chris. Yes, 0-0 it's finished here at King Power Stadium. A point gained, 2 points lost. That's something we can maybe talk about over the course of the next 20 minutes or so with Matt Elliott, Tony Cotty and Jerry Taggart. How do you sum it up, Matt, firstly?
Yeah, I can see what the Tags is saying there, as strange as it sounds. You know, there are pluses and minuses there for Leicester's point of view, but I think ultimately, all things considered, one, it's a point gained, you know, an extra point. We'll see how valuable that is when the other results come round later today and tomorrow. See if the gap has widened between themselves despite adding that point and the, you know, lower table rivals as it is at the moment. So, you know, we're yet to see the actual value of that individual point, although, you know, you've got to look at it as a positive because it's more than Leicester have gained on, how many games is that now? 10, on 7 other occasions. So that's the value of it. And as much as anything, the clean sheet that Jerry mentions, without a doubt, deservedly so. They deserved a clean sheet. They were pretty tight. Palace didn't offer much, in truth. But, you know, you have to give credit when it's due as well. Also, again, Jerry touched on it there, the improvement in the performance pretty much for the duration of the second half, certainly large parts of it, but the fact that they got stronger and stronger in that game, started off well in the second half, a little bit of a lull, but then, you know, they finished a more likely team. Both Jerry and Chris have said there, Leicester were the better team, and that was quite comprehensive, really, without being spectacular. And we haven't said that too often about Leicester City as the game has gone on, and in particular in the second half. So there were certain improvements there, without a doubt. You know, reasons for encouragement, although quite clearly the 3 points would have been much more warmly received.
Yeah, Jerry, what was the reaction like at full time from the crowd? Was it similar? Again, some frustration, some disappointment that it wasn't all 3, but the clean sheet is vital, obviously, for Leicester, and that's 2 in the last 3 now, clean sheet wise, particularly back-to-back home clean sheets as well. So hopefully, confidence wise at the back, things are starting to be shored up a little bit.
Yeah, I'd like to think so. you know, so we're 10 games in, so what's that? 28 more league games to go. But yeah, like Matt's right. Palace weren't at the best today. They didn't offer too much, but whatever they did offer, Leicester were equal to it. I think Danny Ward was obviously called in the action, makes a really good save actually. Doesn't look like it, but when you watch it on the replay, it is a decent save from Danny Ward to get it round the corner. And they look pretty solid. But in fairness, so did Palace. You know, Palace made it really, really difficult for Leicester today in regards to them getting round the back, getting shots off. The keeper I thought was excellent for Palace. He was definitely their man of the match. He was as sure as you can be as a keeper, in my opinion. But yeah, I think even though it's not a win, there is, you know, you're taking more optimism out of that game than you would do in the game last week against Bournemouth, even though they scored. Yes, they did have a few opportunities, but none of them were clear-cut opportunities, let's face it, because Palace have worked very, very hard on running a tight ship at the back. So, yeah, just off the mark in the front line, but look solid, you know, control the game. Yes, there's certain areas of the pitch that we can talk about that, you know, not quite as solid as others in regards to having the ball at your feet. But defensively, I thought, yeah, you know, I believe you me, my stress levels were through the roof. And for me to be sitting here saying, yeah, you know what, I'll take that as another starting point, as a momentum builder. That's what it is. Okay, it's not 3 points. It's not we've ran through Palace and blitzed them and, you know, steamrollered them, but it's still a point in the right direction, and it's a clean sheet. And so that in itself will build a small bit of momentum, a small bit of confidence moving on.
Tony, how did you see it, that game? Obviously we spoke at half time. There was frustration that it wasn't the best of games, was it? Did it continue like that, or did it get a little bit more entertaining? And should Leicester be pleased with a point, disappointed they didn't get all three, a bit of both?
I've got to blame Matt Elliott. I mean, not only did he pick a draw before we started the game, he then declared it was going to be a 0-0 at half time. So I think we can blame Matt today for everything that's happened, I think. But no, in all seriousness, I thought Leicester were the better team at everything. I've been watching the stats go across the bottom of the screen. You know, as I'm listening to the boys there, you can see more possession, more shots on target, you know, more corners, everything Leicester did better than Palace. They was the better team. But it was just this, in the second half, it just didn't feel that there was going to be any clear-cut chances, and there wasn't really. You know, I'm trying to think of what was Leicester's best chance, and although they had shots that were saved. I think Maddison had probably a couple where perhaps you could say there was decent chances, but there was never that real clear-cut chance, and you know they just never really carved Palace truly open to get that clear-cut chance. And you know, of course, there's positives. You know, the clean sheet. The boys have touched on it, clean sheet, and you know it gives them something to build on. And ultimately, yeah, you can say it could possibly be a point gained. Yeah, it was a frustrating game to watch. I think, you know, it wasn't a particularly bad game, but you're just thinking, oh, come on, you know, give us a goal, and then the game would have kicked off, and you know, the tempo would have gone up, the fans would have reacted, all what we said at half time, and you know, as a result of that goal not going in, it sort of flatlined a little bit and never really got going truly as a contest. So, but I'm sure Brendan, you know, when we do hear from him, I'm sure he'll have positive things to say about the game.
Do you agree, Matt?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, just, you know, thinking back to when we were speaking before the game, you know, we were saying how difficult Palace are going to be, the capabilities that they've got, and it's going to be a tough test for Leicester, as it turned out to be. But I think Palace was slightly underwhelming, really, didn't perform like they can do. They are that sort of team, you know, they're not particularly fluent in how they play. They're quite sort of efficient and pragmatic. Terry mentioned there about their determination to, you know, to not concede too many goals, to be tight defensively first and foremost, you know, which takes away from their attacking abilities. And then, you know, Leicester sort of grew into the games and realised that hang on, they were a little bit apprehensive, I thought, early on, but then the longer it went on, I think Leicester were thinking, hang on a sec, we get into any sort of stride, we can take hold of this game, you know, and well, hopefully go and see it through. But that never actually quite materialised. They didn't have the capabilities today to go and really grab the ball by the horn, shall we say. But I thought, so we were saying all that before the game, and afterwards we're saying, oh, Leicester were the better side, better in all departments, pretty much. You know, although there wasn't too much in it all round, but Leicester had the edge everywhere. And on another day, a little bit more confidence, in a different stage of the campaign, Leicester probably go and win that little bit more. There was one that I noticed. There was a couple of bits of hesitancy, I thought, early on, and even in the second half, times that Leicester could have committed more players into the box, but they were a little bit reticent to do so because of the consequences. There was one in particular, me and you were sitting there watching the game, Timothy Castagna, he was like hedging his bets whether to go, get in the box, and then I think James Justin put the ball across, and if he had gone that split second earlier, he would have been in at the far post, probably would have scored. Such is Leicester's fortunes at the moment. But he waited and he thought, well, in his defence, it was Zaha behind him. So he thought, well, I can't really leave him. So he shouted Yuri Tillemans to come over, and Tillemans was a bit hesitant to go because he wouldn't fancy being with Zaha on a 1v1. But Castagna just went that little, whereas naturally he would have gone in times gone by. And little bits and pieces like that can work against you. But I think it's fair to say, far from getting carried away in any form whatsoever, but Leicester are not a million miles off. They're not. We've seen that with performances throughout. I thought the most disappointing performance of the season for me was second half against Bournemouth. But that aside, there have been quite a few reasons to be
optimistic.
Optimistic and positive going forward, and I don't think that's changed.
Yeah, I think obviously we spoke a lot about Wilfred Zaha, Jerry, before the game, didn't we? And how much of a threat he can be. And Leicester were able to nullify him pretty much for the 90 minutes. And that will please Brendan Rodgers. That will please even the fans that were here today, that defensively, Leicester did look a lot more solid today.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? Spoke before the game about they have to start with that. Go back to basics, strip it all back. You look at the stats, you look at the goals conceded, it's the worst in the league. You have to start with a solid base. It's as simple as that for me. You know you've got goals in the team. That's not the issue. The issue is conceding. And today, for the most part, you know, they look solid. And Palace offered, you know, we've already spoke about it, offered not that much in way of an attacking sense. So that has to be, as I said just after the game, that is a good starting point. That is a momentum builder, because obviously if you're going in every week and you're losing games from a winning position, the confidence drains out as a keeper, as a back four. It just does, because obviously the onus is on you to try and make sure that the ball doesn't go in the back of the net, and you can't keep, you know, throwing games away from winning positions. So for them to come out in a tight game, we know what's happens invariably in the second half of games as well, where, you know, I've just spoken about losing games from winning positions. That didn't look like happening today. So that has to be a good thing. It has to be a good thing. And when you've got the likes of Zaha, okay, Zaha wasn't at his best, Ayew not at his best, Edward, whoever, Eze, you know, it doesn't matter. You still have to go out and perform, and you still have to come up against that. And for the most part, I thought, yeah, you know, that's a solid base. They had a solid base to work from today.
And we know, Jerry, that Leicester have got the attacking capabilities to hurt any team in the division. So if they can keep that solidity that we've seen today, things will be absolutely fine this season.
Yeah, they had the chances. All right, not clear cut. You've got to give Palace credit the way they defend. You know, they get bodies back. They make good recovery runs. They get back in and pack the box. And so today just wasn't Leicester's day attacking wise, but that is not the issue. We know that Leicester have got goals in them, absolutely. So to come off the pitch today against a decent team who are, you know, have got their tails up coming into this game, let's face it. All right, they've had their struggles away from home, but still have their tails up, and they're expecting maybe to nick a little win or this, that and the other. Game ends up a 0-0. But yeah, You know, it's a good starting point, and they look pretty solid, I have to say, which is even better. It's not like they scrambled across the line for a 0-0. It's not like they sort of bundled themselves to a 0-0. They look solid.
Which is confidence boosting, I guess, Tony, heading into the game on Thursday, of course, against Leeds United. They can take that confidence from the fact that they were able to keep a clean sheet, 2 clean sheets, as I've said, in the last 2 home games.
Yeah, I think Jerry touched on it when he looked at the man of the match, and quite rightly gave it to Faes. there was defensively there was a lot to be pleased about. Obviously I look at the game from an ex-forwards point of view, and I think Daka was decent, up until he went off, and Jamie Vardy certainly looked very sharp when he come on, and even Iheanacho, he got on the ball and tried to make things happen. So there was good things from a forward point of view. Really, it's just that key thing. It's goals, isn't it? If you get a goal, it changes the game. It gives everyone confidence, and you can build on that. But that's why I said I think Brendan will be pleased. He'll be pleased from a defensive point of view, the performance of the defenders. He'll be pleased with the clean sheet. And he'll also be pleased the fact that they are creating chances. I mean, there's many a time where you watch a 0-0 draw and you think that was awful, and you can't think of anything positive about it. Haven't created chances. Look like conceding all the time. That was not the case today. That was a game where, as I said, Leicester for me were the dominant team. They dominated in everything, all the stats, etc. So you can't say you're pleased with a 0-0, but there's terrible 0-0s and there's positive 0-0s, and I think that was a positive 0-0 today.
Yeah, I guess that is a way to look at it, Matt. And I know we keep talking about the clean sheet, but it's important.
Are you trying to convince me or yourself or both?
A little bit of both.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, genuinely, I think that's more of a plus than a minus. That all round today. Not if. It's different if you're the opposite end of the table and you're pushing for a Champions League slot, and then you're thinking, okay, even if you absolutely peppered Crystal Palace, that would be 2 points dropped because you're in that vein of form, you're in that position in the league. But the way things are, you're grateful for small mercies at the moment, and any positive signs that you can, hold on to really, and that occurred today. Partly the reasons we mentioned, the performance. And it's a point picked up, far from perfect. No one's pretending it is at all, but certain things to pick up from. And you're talking about a confidence booster for the team as well, with the clean sheet and the defensive unit all the way through the side. But in particular, a massive confidence boost for Daniel Amati there. I thought Wout Faes was probably the right decision in terms of man of the match. Looks a real strong addition, doesn't he? Comes in and reads the game, intercepts at times, and flips possession on its head, and aggressive, good decision making most of the time. I think there's 1 or 2 bits to iron out, but generally a real positive. But Danny Amati, 1 or 2 blips, 1 or 2 stray passes, but that aside, he was excellent, and some good distribution as he got more and more confident. Good defensive clearances, good positioning, good decision making, and a couple of pirouettes to add to it all as well. He did as well as anyone, I thought, especially considering all things. He often gets a little bit of criticism, doesn't he? He's not necessarily, well, he's a fan's favourite in some ways, but he's not a regular first choice. But to come in, some people will be thinking, well, why aren't you playing? Marty comes in, did an excellent job.
Yeah, it was the loudest cheer of the afternoon, wasn't it, when he did that little pirouette, as you've mentioned?
Well, he did a wonderful pass in the last couple of minutes as well, in the inside right channel. Yeah, he did well.
Yeah, we spoke before the game, Tony, a lot about obviously being resolute, being strong, having leaders on the pitch, and Wout Faes clearly is one of those. We know he's captained a lot of his previous teams, even Belgium at youth levels as well. So he's got that leadership, that experience, and that had to be shown today, and it was.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I mean, he was both centre halves. Matt and Tags have spoke about him. I thought they'd done really well. But Faes looks good. The only question really, as with most foreign players when they come to the Premier League, how long do they take to settle in? Not if you get a Haaland, happy days, but most players, they take a while to settle in. A lot of it is to do with the pace of the game. Just getting used to the different pace and also the physicality of the Premier League as well, because we all know it's a very physical game over here in England. Not as much as it used to be, I might add, but it is still a physical game. It's still a very quick game. So it was just more a case of how well he would fit into the club. You've also sometimes got language barrier. I'm guessing, Belgium, they're pretty good with their English. I don't think that would have been too much of a problem. So I think there's some real positive signs. Obviously there's been, changes in the heart of that defence. And let's be honest, missing Johnny Evans was a big blow as well. We'll have to wait and see how long Johnny's going to be out. But the two boys today done really well, and I think Faes he genuinely looks yet another good signing by the club, because it's always important to remember the recruitment that's gone on at the club over the last 3 or 4 years. But it's been some absolutely fantastic, outstanding signings up there with the comparable with the best in the Premier League. So hopefully Faes is going to prove to be one of them again.
At the other end of the pitch, Jerry, as you've mentioned yourself, there weren't really many actual clear-cut chances, were there, or standout moments where you thought, that was the moment, that was the chance today?
No, in fairness, not. Yeah, I would say we spoke about a couple of half chances, a couple of really good opportunities where they've got into really good positions in the pitch and just couldn't find the final ball. Harvey Barnes springs to mind, and especially in the first half. He had another one in the second half again, just slightly too heavy touch after great work, you have to say. Little give and goes, little one-touch layoffs. And unfortunately, it just didn't drop the right side for the lads today. But I'll go back to it. You have to commend Palace, because they packed the box and they made it difficult. And the keeper, when he pounced on every stray ball, on every pass, or every control ball that was slightly over heavy, he was on it like a flash. I thought he was excellent today, the keeper for Palace. And so they made it really difficult, even with those little half chances that they had. They were always under pressure. They were always scrambling to get a shot off, or it was in a tight area. They were under pressure. So you have to give them credit for that, Palace. You can see why they don't concede too many.
Is it fair to say you think that they'll be happier of the two, Jerry, with the point, obviously?
Well, he'll be absolutely... He won't be happy with the way his team performed on the whole, but I think coming off the pitch unscathed, then he's got to be happy, Patrick Vieira. Yeah, absolutely.
Leeds next up, Matt, on Thursday. The James Maddison booking right at the very end of the game means he misses that.
Oh, does he?
Yeah. Five yellow cards for James Maddison, so he won't feature against Leeds, which is obviously a blow.
Yeah, you mentioned that when it happened, and I was unaware of how many yellow cards he totted up. But yeah, that's a blow, isn't it? You can't get away from that fact. Maddison's the main creative source, although Barnes was a threat consistently on and off through the game. And obviously, you've got your out-and-out striker or strikers, as the case may be. That may tempt Brendan Rodgers into a little tweak of the system, possibly.
Two up top, maybe.
Possibly, at home. Go for it a little bit, because he hasn't got too many out and out game changers on the bench, and Kelechi Iheanacho is one of them. So he tried, although when he came on, he ended up going wide on the right, didn't he? But albeit only for 5 minutes plus injury time. But yeah, that is a little bit of a predicament, isn't it? Because Maddison, everyone knows how good a player he is, how influential he is. I don't think Leicester are solely reliant on him, but he's been a key part, hasn't he? So I think short term, over one game, Leicester can make do. Probably not the right term, but can get by and still be successful in that game. You wouldn't want to be without him the way things are for a 10-game period or so, would you? That's another kettle of fish. But just when you're starting to feel a little bit of positivity, and then
I'll bring you back down.
Yeah, little blow comes down, doesn't it? But no, listen, Leicester are not about just James Maddison. He's a huge player for them as well, but they've got more in their armoury than just Maddison's qualities. So they'll have to come to the fore on Thursday. Yeah,
obviously a blow, Tony, but maybe potentially a change in system, do you think then? It's an 8:15 kick-off, so we'll be live with Matchday Live from 7:15 on Thursday.
Yeah, it'd certainly be something for Brendan to look at. You don't need me to say this, you've heard it so many times, but I've always been a big fan of two up front. I think especially with the incredible strikers that the club have got at the moment. So, maybe there is a case for maybe Jamie and Patson Daka starting together, or even Jamie. You've got so many combinations that he can look at. But, losing James Maddison's a blow. There's no doubt about that, albeit for only for one game. He grew into the game in the second half. I said at half time he needed to get on the ball more, and he did that. He was involved with probably a couple of the best chances that Leicester had. So it will be a big blow, but it will give the manager option, and it will have to look at it and work out, what is the best thing to do. And, you can always work a system around 2 up front. So hopefully the manager will choose that. It's a game where they're going to need to win the game, you feel. I said before the game that the next 3 games you've got to get 6-7 points, but it doesn't. Sometimes it doesn't work out. The games you would maybe would expect to beat Palace and maybe expect to beat Leeds, it doesn't always work that way. The victory might come at Wolves. We don't know, but it's important in the meantime that they really concentrate on Thursday night and get a victory against Leeds. Leeds are a bit unpredictable. You never quite know what Leeds team is going to turn up. Palace beat them, didn't they, recently? When was it, last weekend? So I think they're there for the taking. But the manager's just got to have a think about tactically and the formation going into that game, because again there'll be more pressure on them. As the results pan out over the course of this weekend, Leicester might well be in bottom position again, and then you've got the pressure going into the Leeds game.
Do you think, if anything, Jerry, it helps Leicester a little bit that it's 2 games in a week? We saw it obviously an awful lot last season, and this season when things haven't necessarily been going well, there's been these big breaks, there's a lot of time for thinking, whereas now it's just 1 game, another game straight away.
Well, there's enough time for Brendan to do as much thinking as he wants, isn't he? But as far as the players are concerned, then yeah, probably, I would say the majority of the players will be going home tonight thinking we should have won that game today, or we should have at least got on the score sheet at least once. So yeah, there'll be, a tinge of frustration within the dressing room, within the players. So really, they should be looking forward to this game on Thursday night. So yeah, you could sort of throw that into the mix. That's a quick turnaround. They've got to start preparing literally straight away after this game now. They'll start preparing for that game because it is essentially a midweek game. But the manager and his staff will have plenty of time to think about how they're going to go about and hopefully beat Leeds. So yeah, it's probably a good thing off the back of this semi-positive, as Matt would throw into the mix, semi-positive result.
I haven't used that today.
You haven't, mate. You haven't. I've used it instead.
Jerry's had to use it. We'll let you have the final say then, Matt, for us here on Matchday Live. But it is a big game, isn't it? Thursday, clearly, against Leeds United here at King Power Stadium.
It is. Tony's right to mention that. Leicester could very much do with winning that. Stating the obvious, I know, but. Listen, whilst it's not do or die at this stage, it's hugely important that they get at least the 1 victory out of this, let's say, call it this, Brendan Rodgers don't like to mention it, but out of this sequence of 3 games. Ideally, it ends up 7 points because they picked up the point today. Highly plausible, despite how the results have gone for Leicester. Like I say, they're not a million miles off. Small margins today. Palace are an awkward side to come up against. Leeds perhaps a little bit more temperamental in their performances, aren't they? They can be all over you some days, and if it doesn't quite work, other times they can look a little bit all over the shop. Leicester have to find a way to compete against that, and have the quality to, when they are open, to expose them, which they're capable of doing, even with or without James Maddison. But yet another big game coming up Thursday.
Absolutely. Thank you very much to Matt Elliott, to Tony Cottee and to Jerry Taggart for their company today. Matt, Tony and I will be on Extra Time on Monday evening alongside Ewan Roberts, so join us for that. at 6 p.m. We'll be obviously reviewing the game today and looking ahead again to that Leeds United one, which is of course an 8:15 kickoff Thursday, as I've said. So do join us at 7:15 for that. But thank you very much to everyone who's tuned in today. Unfortunately, it wasn't a win, but a draw and a clean sheet nonetheless here against Crystal Palace today.